Sometimes the ones who act cold aren't heartless. They're haunted. They distance themselves not because they've stopped feeling, but because every memory still burns. They pretend they've moved on. They ignore your texts. They act like you mean nothing. But behind that silence is a storm they don't want you to see, because missing you out loud would make them fall all over again. When someone acts cold but still misses you, what you're really seeing isn't indifference. It's restraint. Their silence is not the absence of emotion. It's the evidence of how powerful those emotions still are. You see, when a person still feels deeply but can't express it, they build a wall, not to keep you out, but to keep themselves from falling apart. It's a quiet kind of self-defense, a way to survive the chaos of missing someone they're trying to forget. They might ignore your messages, seem distant, even indifferent. But behind that calm exterior is a mind that replays moments, a heart that hasn't fully healed. Every time they see your name, every time they hear your voice, it pulls something inside them they're trying hard to bury. Psychologically, cold behavior often comes from emotional overload. When a person feels too much, too strongly, they don't always know how to handle it, so they suppress it. They pretend not to care because caring feels unsafe. They convince themselves that distance equals control, that silence equals strength. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't kill the feeling. It only buries it deeper, and the more they hold it in, the heavier it becomes. That's why the ones who seem the most detached are often the ones fighting the hardest within themselves. Their coldness isn't rejection, it's protection. It's how they maintain dignity in a situation that still hurts. They don't reach out, not because they don't miss you, but because they're terrified that if they do, the cycle will repeat. They want to move on, but their heart hasn't received the message yet. So they choose silence over confession, distance over vulnerability. Because deep down they know love, when unreturned or unresolved, becomes a wound that talking only reopens. And sometimes that's the cruel paradox of emotion. The colder they appear, the more they're feeling. The quieter they become, the louder their emotions actually are. You know that feeling when someone once couldn't go a day without talking to you and now they can scroll past your name like it means nothing. You send a message. They see it, but don't reply. Hours turn into days and you tell yourself, maybe they're busy. But deep down, you feel the shift, that quiet coldness that says more than words ever could. And yet, there are moments when you accidentally cross paths. Their eyes meet yours for just a second. They look away fast, pretending not to care. But in that single glance, there's something real, a softness they can't hide, no matter how hard they try. It's not hatred, it's resistance. Because if they hold your gaze too long, the walls they built might start to crack. You see them post online, smiling, laughing, living, and you wonder, how can they move on so easily? But here's the truth most people miss. They're not ignoring you. They're fighting themselves not to reach out. They're pretending to be fine because that's the only way they know how to survive missing you. At night, when everything quiets down, that's when it hits them. The silence they created starts echoing back. They scroll through old photos, replay old conversations, just to feel close to you again, even for a moment. But pride keeps their fingers from typing your name, because reaching out means admitting they still care. And that's a truth they're not ready to face. So they keep their distance. They choose silence over honesty, detachment over vulnerability. Not because they've stopped loving you, but because love, in their mind, has already caused enough pain. They think that by acting cold, they can finally let go. But the irony is, it only makes them miss you more. That's the hidden tragedy of emotional restraint. The ones who seem the most detached are often the ones who feel the deepest. Their silence isn't rejection. It's a quiet confession they can't say out loud. Sometimes love doesn't disappear. It just retreats. It hides behind silence, behind the mask of indifference, behind words that were never said. You see, not every cold heart is empty. Some are just tired of caring alone, tired of fighting what no longer feels safe, tired of reaching for someone who keeps slipping away. And so, they choose distance, not because they've stopped loving you, but because holding on hurts more than letting go. It's easier to seem cold than to admit that their heart still trembles when they hear your name. It's easier to pretend not to feel than to risk falling apart again. That's the truth about people who act cold but secretly miss you. Their silence is not rejection, it's a kind of surrender. They've realized that love can exist even in absence, that sometimes the kindest thing they can do for themselves is to feel without showing, to love without expecting, to remember without returning. And maybe that's what real emotional maturity looks like. Understanding that not every connection needs to be rekindled, that some feelings are meant to be carried quietly, like a scar that once burned, but now just reminds. So if someone you care about has turned cold, don't rush to hate them for it. They're not heartless. They're human. And maybe they're loving you in the only way they can, from a distance that doesn't destroy them. Because the truth is, love doesn't always fade. Sometimes it just becomes something quieter, something that no longer seeks to be seen, but simply understood. And in that stillness, there's a strange kind of peace, the kind that comes not from holding on, but from finally understanding why they had to let go. Sometimes love doesn't die the way people think it does. It doesn't vanish overnight or disappear in a single argument. It fades slowly, beneath unspoken words, missed calls, and the quiet moments where both people pretend they're fine. When someone acts cold but secretly misses you, it's not because their feelings are gone. It's because they've learned that warmth can be dangerous, that caring can reopen wounds they've worked too hard to close. So they armor themselves with silence. They build distance, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. And maybe that's something we forget. People don't become distant for no reason. They become distant because closeness once hurt. Because the last time they tried to love fully, it cost them parts of themselves they're still trying to rebuild. So they hold their emotions close and speak with detachment, as if to say, I remember what it felt like to care too much, and I can't go through that again. But late at night, when the world quiets down, their walls begin to crumble. In the silence, memories find them. They replay your laughter, your touch, the way you used to look at them before everything changed. And for a moment, they're back there, in the warmth they pretend not to miss. That's the paradox of emotional distance. It's not a lack of love, but a form of it. A love that's been wounded, a love that's learned to protect itself by staying quiet. So when you see someone acting cold, don't assume they've stopped caring. Maybe they're just trying not to care too much. Maybe their silence is their way of saying, I still think of you, but I can't go back there. Because sometimes the greatest sign of love is not the words we say, but the restraint we show when saying them would only bring more pain. And that's what makes human connections so tragic, yet so beautiful, that even in silence, even in distance, love finds a way to exist. Not loudly, not obviously, but quietly, beneath everything left unsaid. Sometimes it's not the absence of love that makes people cold. It's the presence of too much. Sometimes love doesn't fade. It just learns to stay quiet. Behind every cold silence, there's a story of someone who once cared too much. So if you've ever been on the other side of that silence, remember, it wasn't that they stopped feeling. It's that feeling became too heavy to show. And maybe that's your sign to stop chasing what's retreating and start healing what still lingers inside you. Because love doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes the most powerful kind of love is learning to let go, gracefully, silently, completely. If this spoke to your heart, subscribe to Factsworth, where we uncover the truths people feel but never say. Because sometimes the quietest stories are the ones that matter the most. Factsworth, where emotions meet understanding.